when a guy who was in his mid-40s, who worked out every day, didn't drink, didn't smoke, had a gratitude and meditation practice, when I had a stroke, that was almost impossible to me.
Welcome to Get Unstuck and On Target, the weekly podcast that offers senior leaders insights and strategies to not only lead with confidence and vision, but also to achieve groundbreaking results. I'm your host, Mike O'Neill. I coach top-level executives on the power of ethical leadership to forge teams to be as united as they are effective. In each episode, join me for insightful conversations with leaders just like you, providing practical advice to help you get unstuck and propel you and your company forward. Let's get started. Joining me is Dr. Richard Shuster. Dr. Richard is a licensed clinical psychologist, a TEDx speaker, and CEO of Your Success Insights. Dr. Richard is also the host of The Daily Helping. It's a top personal development podcast, which is regularly downloaded in over 150 nations. Dr. Richard is also a serial entrepreneur. He's created a system that allows him to work less, achieve more, and all the while be present for his wife and children while still making time for hobbies. And it's his role as a serial entrepreneur that we'll be spending most of our time with. Welcome, Dr. Richard.
It is great to be here, Mike. I love your show, and I've been excited about this interview for quite a while.
Dr. Richard, you have a phenomenal background. We could talk at length about any one of those things, but it's the serial entrepreneur that caught my attention when you and I were talking before we scheduled this podcast. Is our listeners are leaders. Many of them are entrepreneurs. And as an entrepreneur, it just seems as if life can get out of hand. And work-life balance, work-life harmony is highly elusive. I would love to spend time with you getting your insights on to what extent did your life experiences influence that in your mind, and in what ways do you help clients achieve that work-life harmony? Welcome again.
Thanks for having me again. This is a topic that I love because it's very personal for me. And so, and you alluded to it, I did a TEDx specifically around how a series of events, in particular a car accident in which I broke my spine, led me to really focus my life on helping others, which is what lights me up inside, and everything that I'm doing today is a product of that. So I won't really go into that. If you want to watch the video, you can, and I think you'll enjoy it. But as it relates to the work-life piece, so as an entrepreneur, we wear many hats. And so I have stake in a number of companies. And so a story for me that I think is foundational here, Mike, I'll go back to the pandemic, early pandemic, June of 2020, and we're still Lysoling kids and groceries. I was having the best quarter of my life when other businesses were really struggling. I had never made more money, ever. And it almost all ended, literally, because I had a stroke and I almost died. When I was in the hospital itself, they actually missed it. And had I not trained where I trained and do what I do as a clinical, or do what I did as a clinical psychologist, I wouldn't be here today. I was able to tell the ER doctors, basically, you're doing it wrong. This is the test you need to give me. I need these blood thinners. And in fact, they acquiesced. And I'm here because of it. The stroke, I won't bore your audience with their own anatomy, but I missed a critical part of my brain that's involved in speech and motor movement called the basal ganglia. I missed it by less than a millimeter. So I can't even show you with my hands how small the gap was between me being here talking to your audience and me either being dead or, at worse, completely incapacitated and a burden to my family. So when a guy who was in his mid-40s, who worked out every day, didn't drink, didn't smoke, had a gratitude and meditation practice, ate only organic foods, like I did it all right. It wasn't like I was doing cocaine and eating Wendy's every meal, right? When I had a stroke, that was almost impossible to me. And yet, when the neurologist who sent me to every other ologist to try and figure out what happened, when all of those results were negative across the board, they asked me, well, let's talk about your work. How many hours of work do you week? I'm going to have to say that again. How many hours a week do you work? And I just kind of looked at him smiling and I said, I don't really work at all. And he was puzzled. He said, what are you, did you win the lottery? Do you have a rich uncle? You're a pretty young guy. He's like, I don't get it. I said, no. I'm an entrepreneur, Dosh. I don't work because I love what I do. And his whole demeanor changed and he was highly irritated by that. And he said, Richard, how many hours a week do you love what you do? And I said, about 80 to 100. And he looks at me with such a serious expression on his face, Mike, and he said, I'm going to tell you something. He said, the fact that you're intact is remarkable. He knew about my car accident, and I just missed paralysis. Like it had a little bit higher, a little bit lower. I would have either been paralyzed from the waist down or the neck down, right? And very, very fortunate, right? And I just obviously dodged the largest bullet of all time with the stroke. And he said, if you don't change your lifestyle, something worse will happen to you. And I took that to heart. And in that moment, and I don't know where this idea came from, but I just said, okay, 25 hours a week for the rest of my life. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I knew that I had to. And so I took a pause kind of from everything. And I have really outstanding business partners in the support system. So I was trying to really examine my behaviors. What had I been doing? What should I change? How could I change it? And yes, I know neuroscience because that's my background, but it was really taking a look at my entire life. And so as I was kind of reflecting on what I had done previously, Mike, I realized a few things. Number one is that I would talk to anybody. If you reached out on LinkedIn to me and you were selling copy machines, I probably would have talked to you, even though there's no reason I need to talk to somebody who sells copy machines, with all due respect to copy machine salespeople if you're on this podcast listening. So that was one thing. Like I talked to everybody. I love talking to people. I thought I could find opportunities in every conversation. Number two, I had a sense of urgency around everything because entrepreneurs often do, right? Like you don't have a stream of clients, you don't feed your family, right? So everything was urgent to me. And so I kind of started there. And the first thing I did was I said, okay, well, who gets on my business count? Prior to the stroke, it was everybody. So how then do I pare that down and make sure the people who come on are quality? And so I think if you're listening to this and you're kind of nodding along and you're saying this makes sense to me, I would encourage you, if you haven't done this already, to really have a sound understanding of your mission, not your company's mission per se, but your personal mission. For me, my mission is to help people be the best versions of who they are, even if it's of no direct benefit to myself. And so everything that I've built ties into that, right? So I have extreme clarity to a granular level about what it is I'm supposed to be doing in this world and why. So if you know that, then you can move on to the next piece, right? So if you don't know that, hit pause on this, get out your journal or your notepad and really start listening and just list your values. What's important to you? What are non-negotiable things for you in terms of who you have relationships with, things like that. Get very clear on what your values are, because once you're rock solid on what your values are, then you can now apply them to your business's mission. So now, once you've done that, the next piece of this is the following. So for me, and everybody's kind of funnel is going to be different, I only want to do business with people that care about helping others first and revenue second. I'm not a nonprofit, right? Like revenue is important. Growth quarter over quarter, year over year, that's important. It's crucial, right? But I want to work with people that truly want to make the world better. be better parents, be better citizens, be better everything, right? So if you don't meet that criteria, that's the first eliminator, right? Then you don't get on my business calendar, period. If you are that person, then the next criteria for me is, are you the chocolate to my peanut butter, right? That is, are we great things by ourselves, but together, the sum of the whole is greater than the parts. That has to be there. So the next step, if you make it through step 1 and you get through tier 2, the final one is, if we do something together, is there a path through to where we each make X number of dollars? Whatever your X is going to be different, right? I know what my X is. So if you meet 2 of the 3, maybe we'll hang out and watch a football game together, but you're not getting out my business calendar. There's no way. And so what that did was it forced me to schedule fewer people, and people who are in alignment with my core values and mission, people who had an offering that made sense and could enhance my own, and to where we could both drive revenue. So that was one of the largest changes that I made. And people reach out to me. I get 30 people a week who want to come on my podcast, right? And then I don't know how many more that want me to sell X or reach out to me wanting, let's partner. You don't know me. Let's partner, right? I hate those LinkedIn messages, right? And so that was step number 1. Step number 2 was the sense of urgency. I needed to really reframe what that meant for me. And I thought back to a comment when I was doing it wasn't my residency, but it was a part of my training while in graduate school. I was at the Emory School of Medicine and working with a severe, not inpatient, but it was an outpatient treatment program, people with schizophrenia and bipolar and things like that. And so I'm in my second or third year of my doctoral program, and the students were all kind of frazzled. Like, we've got all of these responsibilities, psychopharmacology midterm coming up with a notoriously difficult instructor, and everybody's freaked out about it. And how are we going to get all this done? And the postdoc, the resident at the time, said to me, and I'll never forget it, but I didn't apply it until after the stroke, really. He said, Richard, the work will always get done. Like, you will always find the time to get done what you need. So don't worry about it. So I took that a little bit further as I applied it to my own personal life. And the reality is, there are very few scenarios where if we don't take action immediately, if we don't respond to that client, if you get an email from a client at 10 o'clock at night, 99 out of 100 times, maybe they're working and maybe they don't have good boundaries, right? Mm-hmm. But most clients don't expect you, or if you're working for somebody else, most supervisors don't really expect that a reasonable person is going to be on their email or working on PowerPoint presentations or doing whatever professionally at 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. It's just unreasonable. And so we tell ourselves these lies as entrepreneurs because it's romantic, right? Like, most people start a business. They don't go, I'm just going to start a business because I want to get filthy rich. Some do. But most people, there's a sense of purpose behind it. I want to create financial freedom for my family. I want to be able to retire early and spend time with my significant other. I want to make the world better than it is today. Like, we go on these romantic crusades about why we do what we do, and we apply it as a high-level overlay for everything that we do. The problem is, there are very few situations where that's real, right? So there are a handful of people who could reach out to me at this point in my career to where that would be life-changing, and I would need to take action on that at 10 o'clock at night. And I would. If a life-changing opportunity came to me, I would deal with it at that time. If it's not life-changing, if you respond to it at 8:15 the next day, are you likely to lose that opportunity? Is that client likely to say, I'm not, you're irresponsible, I'm not working with you? Of course not, right? And so understanding that urgency has its time and place was another critical thing that I implemented in my life. to give me more of my time back. I keep, in general, I keep my work confined to where I'm sitting right now. I have my desk, I have my monitors, my PC is here. My work email is not on my phone. I deleted that a long time ago. So if there's an emergency, people who need to know how to reach out to me can reach out to me. It's not like I'm off the grid. I'm accessible. But I keep work where it belongs. And so when I shut the door to go upstairs and my kids come home from school, I'm not the entrepreneur anymore. I'm a dad. I'm a husband, right? And so I'm not saying I had a bad relationship with my family before. My wife is amazing. We've been married almost 15 years. My kids are great, but I definitely spend more time with them, a lot more time with them. And when you think about time as well, along this journey, I now view time as the ultimate enemy, right? And so we obviously can't escape time, but there's ways to deal with it. So an example that I love to give, if you go to a grocery store and you need onions, and there's a bag of onions, like 6 or 7 onions for like $4, and there's a little tiny plastic container of diced onions for $3.50. What's the better buy? Well, most people would say, oh, bag of onions. You get, instead of 1 or half an onion, you get 6 onions. That's wrong. And from the entrepreneur who values their time, the answer is the chopped onions, because you don't have to spend, even if it's 2 minutes, dicing an onion. Anywhere you can save time, you need to save time. And the other way that I save time is every day I take stock of what it is that I need to do. You know, there are some things that are mission critical. You've got a client waiting on a proposal, that's mission critical. That's time sensitive, right? A lot of times we're doing things that we're busy, but we're not really productive. We're working on things, but we're not really moving the needle. We're not really pushing the business forward. So I call them the 4 Ds. And these are do, delegate, delay, and drop. And so every morning I take a look at what I've got going on. And those mission critical things, those things that have to be done, particularly those things that are difficult, the more difficult the task, the earlier in my day I get it done. And you should always, and there's science around this that in the interest of time, I won't get into, but the more difficult tasks that require a greater degree of cognition, you put them at the top and you move everything down to, by the time you get to whatever is left, it's kind of easy, right? So the do is stuff that only you can do, stuff that has to be done now. And then you go down the list, right? What is it that I need to do, but I don't need to do it today? Delay. Push it to the next day, push it to the next week. What is it that I need to do, but that can be accomplished by a member of my team? Or if you don't have a team, what could be accomplished by somebody on Fiverr or Upwork or by a VA, right? Delegate it. Get it off your plate so you have more time to spend on your business rather than in your business. So we have do, we have delay, we have delegate, we drop it. There is plenty of stuff that comes across our desk that is just not going to serve us. It's not going to benefit us. Somebody asks you to do something, you don't want to do it. It's not good timing. You have to view things as, if I'm spending time doing something, that's taking away from something else, right? So the more stuff that you take on that is either unnecessary and or doesn't align with your mission, your purpose, your values, so you're taking away from personal time. You're taking away from your family time, right? So be very mindful of what you say yes to and what you don't. So if it's something that doesn't serve me, I just drop it. And I have nice ways of doing that, right? I have scripts that I've written out for different scenarios where I very politely tell people I'm not interested now. Reach back to me in quarter 3, or I'm not interested ever. And I'll let them down gently. It's not you, it's me kind of a thing, right? Like, I don't want to be a jerk to people, but I protect my time so intensely because you have to. And if, as an aside, if you're listening to this and that makes you uncomfortable, if you are the kind of person who is a people pleaser, who doesn't like to hurt people's feelings, you need to really get comfortable with the art of saying no. And no should be your automatic. Your go-to should be no. Again, there's ways to say no that's really polite. I'm sorry, I can't deal with this right now. I'm really interested in what you have to say, and I might see some synergy around that. But right now, I'm focused on a mission-critical project. It's deadline intensive, and I give every client that I work with 100% of who I am all the time. And if we're going to do something together, I would extend you, of course, that same courtesy. But right now, it's this. Reach out to me in July, right? Something like that. So there's ways of establishing these boundaries. Another thing that I think is really critical that I've implemented in my life is self-care. I never did this. And I'm a psychologist and I never did this, right? Self-care is so important, and whatever self-care is to you, it might be meditating, it might be going for a walk, it might be exercising, it might be watching Netflix, with your wife or your husband, whatever it is. But not only do you need to do it, you need to lock it in your schedule. And that sounds very counterintuitive. Well, I'm not going to take time out of my workday to go watch a movie with my wife. Are you crazy? You have to do it. And here's why. Number one, if you don't schedule it, there's no universe in which you're going to do it. It's just not going to happen, right? You will fill your calendar with something else. And there's a pretty significant amount of data that's been collected over the years from a research standpoint that suggests that we're actually far more productive and effective and efficient when we're rested, when we're feeling that we're less stressed, when we're happy, right? So I love to take time, like I'll schedule my workouts every day during the day, right? And so I've got those endorphins flowing through me. I'm feeling good. Back to work. I will end my day, and sometimes I will schedule, I'll do this maybe once a month, once every 6 weeks. In the middle of the week, I'll block the whole day off. And it's just for me. It's just for me. And so, again, you can really only do that as an entrepreneur. You can't do that if you work for somebody else. Your boss really won't like. If you just, I'm going to take off Wednesday for Mike Day, like that generally doesn't fly. But you have to protect your emotional well-being. Of course, sleep and diet and exercise, those things are all critical, and we don't have the time to go into why. But I will say this, if you are the type of person that is on your phone and using your phone right up until the time you go to bed, you're doing your brain and your body a tremendous disservice. The light emanated from the phone, which is on a blue light spectrum, is basically telling you, the little rooster inside of your head, cock-a-doodle-doo, it's releasing hormones that tell your brain it's daytime. Even if you put on the blue light filter, because the phones can do that, that's helpful. The fact of the matter is, if you're watching videos, if you're reading, if you're doing pretty much anything, you're stimulating your brain. So this isn't popular, but I tell people, get an old school $10 alarm clock from Target and put it away from, don't put it on your nightstand, put it somewhere where you actually have to get out of bed to turn off that alarm, if that's a challenge for you, and charge your phone in the kitchen. Put your phone elsewhere. But these are things that, and don't try all these things that I've just talked about for the last 25 minutes at once. Start small. Pick the one that you think, I can do this for 30 days, and really commit to it, but just the one thing, and see how it goes. And then add another, and add another. You can't have successful habit change by trying to change everything at once. You have to do it little by little. But some of these are easy to do. Some of these can be implemented pretty painlessly. But if you do these things, what you're going to find and it's remarkable because I'm making more money, a lot more money than I made in 2020. And I'm spending so much less time working than I ever have. I don't love the term balance because balance implies you've got like a seesaw, right? Like you have a beam and you have to perfectly have the weight. And if it's not exactly aligned at the same time, it topples. So I don't think that's a reasonable analogy. I think harmony is what makes more sense because it's about you having a harmonious relationship with your work. And by having a harmonious relationship with your work, by default, if you do it right, you're going to have a more harmonious relationship with your world. And that means the things that are important to you and the people that are important to you.
Dr. Richard, you have packed a great deal in this conversation. And as you kind of reflect on what you have shared with us today, what do you want our listeners to have as takeaways?
Let me be the cautionary tale to you, right? I believe when things happen to us, we have two choices, right? We either ball up our fist at the sky and blame whatever deity we choose to believe in, or we can learn from them. For me, I kind of have this third piece that I want to share my experience with others so that they don't have what happened to me happen to them. And so take what I said to heart. I was in the best shape. I did everything right, and I almost killed myself because I was working too hard. And so begin implementing strategies. And you can, take these strategies, modify them, make them yours, but start doing things to allow yourself the time to take care of yourself and be present for the people who love you the most.
Dr. Richard, before we wrap up, I'd like to ask a question of our listeners, and that is, I'd like to ask them to reflect on something important, and I think it marries perfectly with what you've shared, and that is, are people following you because they feel they have to, or because they genuinely want to? As a leadership coach, I've had the privilege of guiding many high-achieving leaders through these journeys. One common thread, however, I've noticed is the importance of authenticity and purpose in inspiring others. So whether you're feeling stuck or dealing with rising expectations or seeking clarity in your purpose, know that I'm here to support you in every step of the way. My approach is all about helping you uncover your core purpose and maximize your potential. For together, we can address obstacles, challenge beliefs, and pave the way for growth and fulfillment. So if you're ready to take that next step in your leadership journey, just reach out at bench-builders.com and let's start unlocking your professional and personal potential. Dr. Shuster, I'm sitting here listening to you in this conversation. I've made an incredible number of notes. May I make one observation? One of the challenges you gave to us as listeners is be selective. I can attest. I normally am vetting my guest. You vetted me before you agreed to come on. So you modeled what is it you're encouraging us to do. So I'm flattered that you said yes to coming on this podcast. And I just want to say thank you for sharing your expertise today.
It's been my pleasure, Mike. I enjoyed it.
Dr. Richard, if folks want to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Everything is good about the mothership. It's drrichardshuster.com. It's Dr. Richard, Shuster, but spell it any way you want. I bought every domain with every possible configuration of my name, but that's where you can connect with me. That's where you can access the Daily Helping, my podcast. And we actually have a quiz you can take that, based on your answers, will curate some select content to help you, including those that are the overworked entrepreneur. So thanks for the question, Mike.
Your website's a rich resource for sure. I want to thank our subscribers for joining us, and I hope you have picked up on some quick wins from Dr. Richard. They'll help you get unstuck and on target. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Get Unstuck and On Target. I hope you've gained insights to help you lead with confidence and drive your organization forward. Remember, at Bench Builders, we're committed to your success, your leadership excellence, and your strategic growth. If you've enjoyed our conversation today, please leave a review, rate, and subscribe to keep up with our latest episodes. This show really grows when listeners like you share it with others. Who do you know who needs to hear what we talked about today? Until next time, I encourage you to stay focused on the target and continue to break new ground on your leadership path.